Right now on Currents News, students using their spring break for good, working with Habitat for Humanity to restore a family's home. Plus, Cardinal Dolan has a message to Catholics this Easter season: come back to Mass. President Biden unveils sweeping plans to combat gun violence in America. And a behind-the-scenes look inside the reconstruction of the beloved Notre Dame Cathedral nearly 2 years after its fire. Good evening, I'm Christine Persichette. A healthcare worker is getting a new place to call home thanks to a group of Xavier students, all of them donating their spring break to giving back. Emily Drewby spoke with them on Long Island and has more.
Xavier High School students rolling up their sleeves, spending their spring break doing manual labor under the hot Long Island sun. Giving back and helping a healthcare hero, Nikisha.
I was like praying and I prayed. I was like, as where I'm living right now is not livable. I live into an attic. There's no hot water in the shower. There's no heat.
The Christian woman's prayers were answered when Habitat for Humanity picked her for a home. A nurse's aide who worked on the front lines during the pandemic. James Joyce and his fellow classmates using their time off from school to build what Nikisha calls her forever home.
It feels good to know that I'm helping someone.
Much needed help. They're the first school back since the pandemic.
And we haven't really had any other volunteer groups that come out.
Walter Mackey says they were stuck just using their staff to keep projects going. While they made it work, it's nice to have the extra help. He knows firsthand how important what they do is.
I am a Habitat homeowner.
Receiving his home in 1999 and a job offer shortly after.
I usually say it's like winning the lottery. It's just the relief to knowing where you're going to be able to put down roots for the rest of your life.
Roots, just like the ones these students are helping to create for Nikisha and her daughter.
I'm so grateful to those students because, I mean, it's their breaks where a lot of kids will be home doing other things and they come and they help me, a total stranger, you know, giving me and my daughter a gift. A big gift.
Xavier was also at this site back in February. For the Jesuit school students, it's the perfect way to do God's work.
When we learn of Ignatius Loyola and his teachings, he believes in work through service as well as St. Francis Xavier. And I think that's exactly what we're doing right here. We see God, we find God in all things, and service is one of those ways when we could see God.
Right now they're in the demolition phase of the building, but the home should be ready for Nikisha and her daughter to move in by the end of the summer. Now, it's not free. She is paying for it in what they call sweat equity, volunteering for other projects, paying it forward just like these students. In East Patchogue, Emily Drewby, Currents News.
New York Cardinal Timothy Dolan is calling on Catholics to return to Sunday Mass this Easter season. In a column for Catholic New York, he said the elderly and those with health risks can still excuse themselves from Mass. However, he called on the healthy to come back, saying, quote, "But for the majority of us, are we going to restaurants, to the kids' soccer and Little League games, to the store, to the beauty parlor, to gatherings with family and friends? Well, then, it's time to get back to Mass." The Cardinals' call back to Mass comes as a number of New Yorkers are making a mass exodus from the city. According to a new report from the real estate firm CBRE, net move-outs from the city were 51% higher in 2020 than in 2019. The area that saw the most loss was in Manhattan. The zip code 10019, which contains part of the theater district, saw close to 4,000 residents leave. Outside of Manhattan, also hard hit was the Crown Heights neighborhood of Brooklyn. The area's 3 zip codes lost close to 5,800 residents. The U.S. is seeing a decrease in its daily average of coronavirus-related deaths. According to the CDC, the country averaged 745 deaths a day between March 30th and April 5th. That's down by nearly 20% compared to the previous week. Despite a decline in fatalities, the country is seeing an increase in new cases and hospitalizations. And the CDC now saying the UK variant of the coronavirus is the source of most new infections. The spread of the variant, which scientists have found to be more contagious, adds to the growing concerns that the country may face another surge. Roughly 17,000 variant cases have been reported in the U.S., and the U.K. variant makes up just over 16,000 of those cases.
Enough prayers. Time for some action.
President Joe Biden announces a number of executive actions to curb gun violence in America. The plan comes as he waits for Congress to pass legislation on gun control, but he stresses his actions are not enough. Nadia Romero has the story.
After several recent mass shootings and no consensus from Congress on how to respond.
Enough, enough, enough.
President Joe Biden announced Thursday he's taking action.
This is an epidemic, for God's sake, and it has to stop.
At a Rose Garden event, Biden and Attorney General Merrick Garland laid out several executive actions that the White House says will help curb gun violence.
It is a problem that we must all work on together in a collective effort to keep guns out of the hands of criminals and save lives.
Among the proposed new steps, restricting so-called ghost guns built from parts bought online, targeting braces for pistols by requiring them to be registered, and new investments in intervention programs in violence-prone areas. But the actions fall short of what Biden hoped Congress would address.
They've offered plenty of thoughts and prayers, members of Congress, but they passed not a single new federal law to reduce gun violence. Enough prayers. Time for some action.
The moves come after deadly mass shootings in Georgia and Colorado in recent weeks. The White House says it hopes more will be done.
Whether Congress acts or not, I'm going to use all the resources at my disposal as president to keep the American people safe from gun violence.
In Washington, I'm Nadia Romero.
His speech comes following another deadly shooting. 5 people, including 2 young children, were killed in South Carolina. Police say the shooting was carried out by former NFL player Philip Adams, who killed himself afterwards. Adams was later found dead in a nearby home outside the city of Rock Hill of a self-inflicted gunshot wound after a standoff with police. Among the victims were a prominent doctor in the area, his wife, and young grandchildren. Investigators say they believe Adams was the only gunman and are trying to figure out why he killed the doctor. George Floyd's cause of death was the main topic during Derek Chauvin's murder trial Thursday. The prosecution called a pulmonologist as their expert witness. He explained how Floyd's oxygen levels decreased sharply when Chauvin and the other officers were holding him down, ultimately causing his death.
That he has the handcuffs in place combined with the street, and then that he has a knee on his neck, and then that he has a knee on his back and on his side. All of these 4 forces are ultimately going to result in the low tidal volume.
The defense argues underlying health conditions and drug use contributed to Floyd's death. This week, President Biden said he disagrees with some Catholics over their concern for the Equality Act, which would codify and protect gender ideology in law, essentially outlawing the church's teachings on the human person. Here to talk more about church teaching and pastoral care is the Bishop of Brooklyn, Nicholas DiMarzio. He's sitting down with former tablet editor Ed Wilkinson for this week's Into the Deep. Ed.
Thank you, and we have Bishop DiMarzio with us today. We're going to talk about a very tricky subject, the pastoral care of gay people in the church. Bishop, Cardinal Farrell at the Vatican recently said that gay people cannot be excluded from the pastoral care of the church, and yet some gay people feel alienated because of the traditional teaching of the church. How do we begin to breach that gap?
I think we have to look at people as people. You don't say, well, you're a gay person, I'm going to treat you differently from somebody else. Everybody's is the object of pastoral care. Whatever they need depends on what they're looking for. The issue came to a head recently because of the question asked by a bishop from Germany to the congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith. They said, "Can we bless same-sex unions?" Blessing meaning not witnessed as a marriage, but just give a blessing to the couple if they come for a blessing. And the Holy See responded, I think, very well. It could be taken out of context, some of the things they said, but they said, no, you can't bless 2 people in a sinful relationship unless they've decided that they're going to live in a different way, not sinfully. That would be a different course to follow. The person individually or together ask for the strength which is a blessing, a sacramental, not a sacrament. So the church wants to accompany people and their journey. Sometimes people are stuck in things that they find difficult to get out of. But again, I will go to science. Science is a wonderful thing, and there's no conflict between good science and good religion. Science cannot tell us that homosexuality or same-sex attraction is something genetic. It has never been proven, and if it's proven, then I'll be wrong. But I don't think, if they would have tried very hard till this point to prove that, they cannot. Sometimes we have nature and nurture. The way we're nurtured does influence the way we act, the way we do things. But there is a combination. And usually human nature, being free, can overcome some of the difficulties we have. Some people have more trouble than others. Some may never be able to overcome some tendencies. But the fact of the matter is, if it were the fact that God created gay people, then it would be a whole different story. God created people.
The Holy Father, Pope Francis, is constantly reaching out to gay people, and some people misinterpret that as an affirmation of their lifestyle. Is there a contradiction in what the Pope, Holy Father, is saying?
No, I think he's doing the right thing. He's reaching out to people who need encouragement, who needs accompaniment, as he says all the time. That doesn't mean we condone what they're saying. I think one of the most famous things that has to be explained, when he said, "Who am I to judge?"
Right.
The press killed the story, because why he said that, he was asked on the plane coming from Brazil, I remember, and I got the whole text, what was said. He was referring to a priest who was in the employ of the Vatican. He was in the Nunciatura in Uruguay, and he had a sexual relationship with the gay person. But then he repented and he said, "No, I really don't want to do this anymore." And so the Holy Father gave him a work in the Vatican. And when they asked him, "Why did you do that?" he said, "Who am I to judge?" Right. But the man had already wanted to change his lifestyle, so that's why he said it.
Lastly, Bishop, many people, adults, mothers and fathers, struggle with this thing that their children may be gay and may want to enter into some kind of a gay relationship. What does the church have to say to those people?
It's difficult, obviously, for everybody. Children are your children. You can't disown them. We can't hate anybody for when they do something that we don't agree with. Love is the only answer in these cases. It doesn't mean we agree. It doesn't mean we permit, but love, it will solve some problems. It is difficult. But at the same time, if our culture keeps being this permissive of understanding of all kinds of sexuality, then we've got major problems that no one family is going to be able to overcome.
Bishop, thank you so much for your insights on this today. Thanks for being with us. And now we're going back to you, Christine, at the news desk.
Thanks, Ed and Bishop DiMarzio. Still to come right here on Currents News, we look inside the rebuilding of Notre Dame, almost 2 years since fire destroyed the cathedral. Pope Francis is keeping Indonesia in his prayers after flooding leaves more than 100 dead and dozens missing. And Israel comes to a standstill to remember the Holocaust.
There are now some big changes to the tablet website. You can get personalized access to the Catholic news you value. Sign up for free at thetablet.org.
It's been almost 2 years since the Notre Dame Cathedral went up in flames, but construction has been moving ahead in full force as Catholics start to see the parish church rise from the ashes. And a new update on those efforts. Experts have recently identified the first 89 trees they will use to remake the cathedral's historic spire. Melissa Bell gives us a behind-the-scenes look inside Notre Dame Cathedral's reconstruction.
Its vaulted ceilings, stained glass windows and elaborate columns. As you can see on these images, so much of what makes Notre Dame one of the world's most exquisite Gothic wonders stands tall, almost miraculously. The construction of the cathedral may have taken 182 years from when it began in 1163. It took the fire of 2019 a matter of hours to compromise its stability. The work of the last 2 years has been all about ensuring that the cathedral stayed upright.
We have to be sure that the structure is solid. So I have to take a lot of measures to consolidate. We don't want to make reconstruction without being reassured.
Here you can see the iconic North Tower that at one point had been threatened by the flames on the night of the fire. In the end, they were put out before it could collapse. But this was where the most devastating part of the fire took place. It was here that the famous Notre Dame spire once stood.
As the world watched, the spire, which had been under renovation, collapsed, breaking through the vaulted ceiling, which then crashed into the nave. The scaffolding that had surrounded it, 40,000 tubes of metal now twisted into the structure, then had to be carefully picked through and removed.
This is a place where the spire collapsed. You know, this is the center of a drama.
The general then shows us the exact spot where the spire first came crashing through. Here, the vaulted ceiling is held up by wooden pillars, each weighing 1.5 tons. They ensure, explains the project manager, that if the stones give way for whatever reason, bad weather, a tremor, a shock, well, the wooden support beams will keep the structure standing. Now that the scaffolding for the renovations is ready, General GEORGELIN says that the work of rebuilding Notre Dame's vaulted ceiling and its spire will begin before the end of the year. Melissa Bell, Paris.
Yet the work on Notre Dame will still take some time. It's not unusual for cathedrals of its size to take decades or even centuries to build. When construction on the French church started in 1163, it wasn't completed until 1345. And more recently, Barcelona's Sagrada Familia laid down its cornerstones in 1882. But because of funding issues and a civil war which delayed construction, experts estimate it won't be completed until 2026. Pope Francis is praying for the victims of severe flooding in Indonesia. A tropical cyclone triggered flash floods and mudslides Easter Sunday, killing at least 140 people. In his weekly general audience on Wednesday, the Pope called on the Lord to receive the dead, comfort their families, and sustain those who have lost their homes. 2 days of heavy downpours in the Asian nation left villages and small communities covered in mud and debris, forcing about 10,000 people to flee to shelters. Caritas Indonesia, the country's Catholic charity network, is helping with rescue efforts, handing out aid to flood victims and offering shelter in churches to those who lost their homes. If you'd like to help recovery efforts in Indonesia, just head on over to caritas.org and click Donate. Thursday marks Holocaust Remembrance Day. It is a solemn day in Israel as citizens, at the sound of a siren, pause to honor and remember the millions killed during the Holocaust. The day itself is the anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising on the Hebrew calendar. Still to come on Currents News, we speak with an actor from a new movie about Our Lady of Guadalupe, how his faith helped him land the role. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back.
Only a miracle can save us.
It's a modern-day production of the story of Our Lady of Guadalupe. The movie is in theaters and available on demand right now. It's being touted as a love story of hope and faith. Award-winning actor Guillermo Ivan stars in the movie and joins us now from Los Angeles to tell us about it. And Guillermo, first tell us what makes this movie different from others about Our Lady of Guadalupe. I know you portray a modern-day journalist who's doing a story about faith, right?
That is correct, Christine. First of all, thank you for having me today. It's exciting to be here sharing the story of Lady of Guadalupe with all of you. And yeah, I mean, what makes this story unique and different is the perspective, the vantage point from which the story has been told. Pedro Brenner, our writer and director, narrates two different storylines at the same time. John Martinez, a Mexican-American guy in the present moment who is going through difficult times right now in his life. He doesn't have any hope. He does not have faith. He's facing a big identity problem, and he has a new assignment, and that assignment is doing a research on Our Lady of Guadalupe. And when he starts going deep into the story of Juan Diego and Lady of Guadalupe, he starts seeing himself as that native from 1531 facing those challenges in that era. So, you know, the story is being told from that perspective, from the present moment, and he you know, he sees himself as Juan Diego as well. So the perspective is unique. Is not being told from the documentary point of view. Is more real, more human, and in my opinion, that's what makes this movie special.
And it seems you were meant to be in this film. I hear you asked God for a sign to guide you in your acting career. Tell us about that.
Well, yes. Literally, what happened was I was on vacation with my family in Mexico City. I was born in Mexico City, and by the way, Our Lady of Guadalupe was always an important image in my life. My great grandmother used to take me to the big basilica, to La Villa in Mexico every year to thank Our Lady of Guadalupe. And then she passed away. My grandmother, to this day, she does the same thing every year. She goes to basilica. She's 94 right now, so it's a big tradition. So I was down there in Mexico. I was feeling kind of lost, just like John Martinez in my life. I wanted to know what the next step would be, not only in my career but also in my life. And that day, that morning, I asked for a sign. I prayed in the morning, and I was like, please just give me a sign, send me something, some signal, some sign, so I can understand what the next step would be. And that was the day when Pedro called me, and he told me, look, after several conversations, you know, everything is aligned, and you're going to be playing Juan Diego, and you're going to be John Martinez.
Wow, that is a crazy story. We want to just take a quick peek at the movie.
This is the story of how I became a believer.
I know you were raised a Catholic, but can you relate to your character? Did making the movie about having faith actually strengthen your own faith?
Absolutely, absolutely. If I can tell you the truth, I can notice the difference, and I'm talking about myself. You know, I was one person before shooting this movie, and I feel different today. The way I relate to my faith, the way I relate to, you know, to God is quite different right now. Yeah.
Wow. All right. Guillermo Ivan, award-winning actor from the new movie Lady of Guadalupe. Thanks for joining us, and we can't wait to see the movie.
Thank you, Christine.
Lady of Guadalupe is in theaters and available on video on demand right now. You can also buy a copy of it on DVD April 13th. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us, because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.